to the third installment of our Exile and Displacement series titled The Female Voice in Sufi Ritual, an Introduction. As always, we will be having a Q&A session at the end of this lecture. So if you have any questions or comments, please hold them until then. And once again, if you would like to view closed captions, please click the live transcript button on your Zoom toolbar and select Show Subtitle or View Full Transcript. Thank you. The floor is yours, Dr. Abbas. You may proceed.
Okay. Honored members of the Broadway community, the Purchase community, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's lecture, which is a third in the series of Exile and Displacement. In today's lecture, I'll speak about the female voice in Sufi ritual and introduction. And I have here with us Doreen Rossi from CTS and my research assistant, Malik Omer, and she's the one who's facilitating and, taking care of all the logistics in the presentation. She's in charge of the technicalities of it. All right. Can we? This meeting is being recorded. Can we get this thing out, Malik? Because, it's covering the map. Hello?
I think you just need to click the blue button that says got it.
Okay. All right, this is the area, this is the continent of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. This area used to be one country, but it got divided up into three different units, this one and this one got partitioned in 47. This was a part of Pakistan, and then they claimed independence in 1971. So I'm mainly going to be concentrating with my work here in Pakistan, the Sufi shrines and the performers and everything, and the different kinds of Sufi music. But I will also go into this area because this is where it all started. And so in North India, this is the area where I have recordings or videos, and I'm going to be talking about those. And I don't have anything from Hyderabad, but Hyderabad also has a very strong Sufi tradition. In fact, they all have it here because India has several hundred languages. So I'm sure they're doing it, but I'm concentrating just on the few languages that I've worked on, i.e. the performers using Arabic, Persian, and the local dialects like Purbi, Awadhi, Punjabi, Saraiki, and all these things. And this area Bengal has a very strong Sufi tradition, but then, they do it in Bangla. So this is the area, that I'm dealing with, okay? Right up to here. So I've shared the map with you, and I'll describe to you my journey in the research. My research evolved in 1985 when I was studying for a PhD at the University of Texas at Austin. This was a period of exile and displacement for scholars, artists, musicians, thinkers, minorities, and females like myself. Many of us moved to Western academies, artistic venues, and concert halls. The world powers were fighting the Soviets in Afghanistan. Not only did the West arm the Pakhtun Mujahideen with weapons, it's here, Afghanistan is here. And so, we're also going to include Afghanistan here. Sorry, I should have mentioned it, So this is where the war started. And at one time, before the British carved up the continent like this whole area was also, one country, one region. And so in the late 70s, the US got involved in conflict with the Soviet Union, because this is Soviet Union, they marched into Afghanistan with consent from the Afghani political parties and the socialist parties, and they had a plan to move into the Arabian Sea, to the warm waters, where all the Gulf, the oil and everything is. And this is not something new. It's called the Great Game, and it's been going on for the last almost 200 years. And mainly it started with the Russians and the British in India, because the Russians the Red Army wanted an entry into India and its riches. So there were many battles between the Afghans and the British colonists, and they never won quite a number of them, because Afghanistan was their country, the Mujahideen's country and Makhtoon's country, and they knew a lot more about their region than the British did. And they came back, very defeated in the first Afghan war. But, I'm not going to go off the tangent, I'm just explaining it to you. The world powers were fighting the Soviets in Afghanistan. Not only did the West arm the Pakhtun Mujahideen with weapons, but it further brought with it a military dictatorship of General Ziaul Haq, who displaced the democratically elected Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, whom he later executed. General Ziaul Haq, with support from the West, was propped up by the radical Islamic parties, Saudi Arabia and Gulf financing, Pakistan's inter-services intelligence, training the Mujahideen, in addition to bin Laden's fund. Bin Laden was a very strong participant and an ally of the West when they were in Afghanistan. It was only later that they fell apart, because the West did not deliver the promises that they had made to him. And I think I talked about it in my first presentation also. All these later morphed into the Taliban and the Al-Qaeda as we see them today. My research on the rituals of the female voice evolved amid radical Islamism and violence in Afghanistan, Pakistan, also referred to as AFPAC, from 1978 to 1989. Malik, you can circle it again, please. The area. Yes, this is the whole AFPAC. The whole area is AFPAC, Afghanistan and Pakistan, because Pakistan, the West could only get into Afghanistan through Pakistan, and this was, to begin with, it was always a covert war. They never admitted to it. The West did not admit to it, because the execution of this war was done through Pakistan's inter-services intelligence, and billions poured into the country and into this whole region. I document the place of women in Sufi practice in the continent of Pakistan and India. Commenting on my research, the late Elizabeth Fernier, who was my mentor, said, Western scholars have described Islam as a male religion, a characteristic that is repeated in the 21st century. As evidence of their position, they claim that only males attend mosques while boys are seen in the Quranic schools. She says further, the views arise from misconceptions. They compare Islam to Christianity. However, the Judaic religious practices, the Muslim rituals lie, like the Judaic religious practices, the Muslim rituals lie in the home. Fernier claims that for Western scholars, the research on Islam is text-based with very little fieldwork. Knowledge of languages such as Arabic, Persian, Turkish, Urdu, Purbi, and the other lingos spoken by Muslims around the world was minimal in the West. Muslim scholars themselves started to write in English, French, and German after the 19th century, with the incursion of Western colonial powers in their lands, although the colonial process had started much earlier. Ethnocentrism too affected their disinterest in non-Western cultures. Sufism or Islamic mysticism was one such area. Then she proceeds, it is only in the work of the Tunisian anthropologist Sophie Ferruccio that we find accounts of women's participation in annual rituals or monthly visits called ziyarats. Ziyarat means, to go and visit, to see, to the shrines. And very little has been published in English about women and men in South Asian Sufism, says Fernia. All right, I'll tell you more about Sufism. Sufism is a spiritual mystical dimension of Islam, which I will discuss in detail also in a later lecture. Sama, or the spiritually intoxicated context where Sufi devotional poetry is sung and heard, is almost unknown in the West, but is widespread in the Muslim cultures of South Asia, Southeast Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. Sama is poorly documented and understood among the wider scholarly audiences. This is because in the earlier phases, Sama were Qawwali, or the Prophet Muhammad's hadith or sayings, together with excerpts from the Quran, were sung to melody. The event was exclusive. It was a secret practice that was only the domain of knowledgeable males. Only those initiated in the deep esoteric insights of the sixth sense or intuition were permitted to attend Sama assemblies, as I will show in a live video. At the shrine of Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia in Delhi, and he lived from 1238 to 1325 AD. Sama further involved the knowledge of elitist language such as Arabic and Persian, which was not available in the marketplace of the vernaculars. As such, the grassroots illiterate speech communities were not initiated. Women's participation is even less known. The role of women has been ignored in scholarly work despite the strong gender component. However, it is very much a part of the living Sufi traditions in countries like Iran, Iraq, Turkey, Lebanon, Egypt, Syria, Morocco, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India, as well as in Muslim Africa. In the Muslim world, the mosque is primarily an arena for male activity with very little visible participation of women. As such, the important spheres of religious and spiritual engagement for women are the Sufi shrines. There they are visible and have a significant presence. This too I'll demonstrate in the video performances in this lecture. Although women have mentored male Sufis as mothers, grandmothers, sisters, or spouses, we find little mention of them in scholarly literature. A researcher claims that male Sufi poets either do not bother to mention women in their discourse, perhaps because they're considered irrelevant, or maybe too sacred to be brought into the unholy light of publicity. With the birth of Pakistan in 1947, the elitist and secretive Sama rituals were brought in the open for public consumption. The strictly sacrosanct Sama rituals became available even to the initiated. The holy context came into the marketplace. This is largely due to the communicative role of radio and television that sacred knowledge became democratized. Through the performances of Sufi musicians like Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan and Abid Apareen, exiled and diasporic audiences engaged with the myths of audacious women like Heer and Sassi, who defied their communities to escape with their lovers. The female myths questioned privilege and male hegemony. They also questioned ownership of the sacred. Such domains have never been of interest to Western scholars, as they could not access the close-knit communities where such poetry is sung, heard, and understood. Nor could they access the female spaces to appreciate the defiance of secluded women. Furthermore, they've been handicapped through the lack of education in the indigenous languages and the cultures. However, such knowledge is available to the illiterate yet informed audiences of the performances discussed here. These audiences are fully proficient through oral instruction. In post-colonial communities, such as those in England, working class males were employed in large numbers from South Asia, that is Pakistan, India, Nepal, and Bangladesh, to work in the rebuilding projects after the Second World War. Most of these males were illiterate, yet proficient in reciting and understanding Sufi poetry through oral culture in their native countries. The Sikhs, for instance, were appreciative audiences of Punjabi Sufi poetry, though it was created by Muslim bards, while they themselves have strong Hindu ties in addition to Muslim beliefs. Consequently, they made captive audiences for Sufi musicians from South Asia, who in the late 70s started to move to the West as their own societies became radicalized. Sufi poetry and music democratized sacred knowledge for the grassroots citizens, thus defeating the hegemonic control of religious belief by the clergy or the elites. Even in the singing of Sufi poetry, as we see here in the videos, it's the same. And it happened somewhat like what happened in Europe in the 1500s with Martin Luther's reformation of the church, where he said, by faith alone, by grace alone, and by scripture alone. Do we show them any of the videos, Malik? Not yet?
Not yet.
Okay. I bring my own understanding and experiences of the culture that I portray. I convey the subtleties of an oral culture where information is passed through word of mouth from person to person, from family to family. I am astonished when I hear house cleaners and daily wage workers at car washes in Pakistan recite Waris Shah's Punjabi Sufi poetry from memory, or when the technicians of the Institute of Synology educate me in the female myths of Shah Abdul Latif's poetry. Shah Abdul Latif was a renowned Sindhi Sufi and a rebel. And let me say, I mean, although the audiences, the grassroots audiences are illiterate, but they are not mentally or intellectually dumb or deprived of understanding. They can understand the depth and the nuances of Sufi poetry as it is sung. When I make certain references, such as child marriage, the Western reader may not find scholarly references to the same subjects, such as in the poetry of Hazrat Amir Khusro. The interpretation is novel as there is scant literature on child marriage. Some of Khusro's lyrics express the grief of the child bride who is sent away to an alien land. Such lyrics are traditionally sung in South Asian weddings in utmost grief at the time of the bride's departure or rukhsati. And I quote the child bride's lament as Amir Khosrow demonstrated, and I've translated them into English, but we will also see it being sung in the indigenous language in Purbi and Awadhi when we get to the videos. Why hast thou married me in a foreign land? Listen, O my father, to my brothers thou gave palaces, and many too. To me thou gave the exile. Listen, O my father, listen. I am, O father, the little birds in thy courtyard. When night falls, they fly away. Listen, O my father, listen. I am, O father, the little buds in thy Arabian jasmine. Every home seeks them. Listen, O my father, listen. Why hast thou married me for exile? Listen, O my father, listen. A mantle full of dolls I left, my girlfriends all. Listen, O my father, listen. Lifted I the veil in the palanquin. Palanquin is like a little box wooden made of wood, and it's carried by 4 men. To see my exile in another's foreign land. Listen, O my father, listen. Having seen this, Khosrow says, may thou always be blessed in matrimony. Such is the exile and displacement of the child bride. Although the aesthetics are exquisite, I am moved by the child bride's lament. It's only now that the NGOs address the issue for social reform. To a native scholar like myself, the events are endemic. My approach is within the practices of the indigenous cultures. I investigate the rituals at the Sufi shrines in Pakistan and look at female participation. I hear the female voices in the ceremonials. My research is a linguistic anthropological study of poetry in devotional settings. I transmit the flavor of languages such as Punjabi, Purbi, Saraiki, Arabic, Persian, and Urdu, as well as the indigenous dialects. It may interest my audiences that my research was done from back to the front. While I was studying at the University of Texas, I had limited funds and no access to a community of individuals who could help me in the basic question that who were the creators of the poetry that I was transcribing from audio cassettes and videos that I brought with me from Pakistan. Just a minute. Trying to turn the page. Most fascinating of all are the bold lovers like Heer, Sasi, Laila, Mirabai, and many more. In addition, the musicians sang devotional poetry that paid homage to the Prophet Muhammad and his azwaj or his wives. The musicians further recited the Prophet's hadith or sayings. They invoked the bridal imagery to speak about the Miraj or the Prophet's ascension where he met with the deity. The veil is lifted or the state of kashf, revelation is attained. The musicians further sang about the great Sufi mystics of the Muslim world, about gender, class, color, and caste. Their poetry challenged the patriarchy and the establishment. The Sufis were riders of the night. Through the device of the female speaker, even in the meta language of the mystic ecstasy, the musicians spoke as females. Even the men who were singing it, used the grammar of the female voice. These findings and the musicians' mesmerizing poetry sung to the percussion of drums became the impulse of the study. In the same period of the 80s, Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan's qawwalis resonated in the concert halls of the West. Other Sufi musicians too performed for the expatriate speech communities. I wonder if the musicians too were aware of the female voices in their poetry, as I did, suffer from the paradox of familiarity, as Kaufman says. At home, Abida Parveen, a female Sufi musician, was framing her own critique of the orthodox establishment of General Ziaul Haq in public concerts through Sufi poetry. Many in the audience were state officials who enjoyed her concerts. Okay, hang on. All right, hang on. Sorry, the pages have gotten a little messed up. Abida Parveen, as a token of defiance, was at the very beginning of the concert, removed her chador or veil. She put it right in front of her because the state was demanding, that women, get veiled and they should not leave the four walls of the house. The veil and the four walls for women, she publicly cast off both the chador and the char diwari. I mean, it became a slogan, and there were all these, clerics going around, trying to lock up women and talking about, putting them in burqa and also confining them to the house. And, people myself, we also defied it in a very intelligent way, we would just, come from the house and, be who we are. And when we got to the university, we would put the chador on, go to the office and be our own selves. So we also knew how to beat the system. Both the Institute of Folk Heritage and Islamabad had provided the materials to Abida Parveen for the performance. And people were there in thousands at that concert, which I also attended. The performance started an hour late as the artist herself couldn't make it to the venue because of the jam-packed traffic. Among the artistic devices that Abida Parveen used at this concert was singing in the native dialects of Sindhi, Punjabi, or Saraiki. However, having been trained in the classical musical traditions of North India and Pakistan, He's equally fluent in Arabic and Persian. So is Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, who I claim is the greatest linguist and Sufi performer of this millennium. Sufi musicians are not only artists, they are additionally muallims or spiritual mentors in their communities. They follow in the footsteps of their murshids or their mentors, the great Sufi poets and awliya, holy men, who are guardians of the faith. Coming to myself, since I've worked in this area, I discovered my own roots. I had heard my material aunts and cousins' narratives about our lineage from Hazrat Bahauddin Zakaria and Hazrat Shamse Tabriz of Multan, who were Sufis. We are Sohrawardi Sufis. My family are Sohrawardi Sufis. Additionally, my mother's ancestors were and are muftis who are scholars of Islamic law. My mother herself could successfully interpret Islamic law. Kanhaiya Lal's Tarikh-e-Lahore or the history of Lahore city mentions our significant Mufti clan of the inner city Lahore. On my father's side, we are connected to Ziauddin Barani, who is a major source of Muslim ethnomusicology between 1285 to 1361 in India. To connect the dots, in the second phase of the research, when I returned to Pakistan between 1992 to 98, I did the actual fieldwork to interview Sufi musicians like Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, Abida Parveen, and others. I did substantial fieldwork at the Sufi shrines in Pakistan, as well as the archives, until finally I found the answer to my question. Who were the creators of the poetry that the musicians sang? I got the answer. They were the many Sufi poets like Shah Abdul Latif, Baba Farid, Khwaja Ghulam Farid, and Bulleh Shah, and many others. Toward the end, Christopher Shackle, a scholar of Saraiki at London University, matched my transliterations with Sufi poetry written in the Perso-Arabic script. What I found at the University of Texas archives was Sufi poetry in the Gurmukhi script, which I could not read. It's Sanskritized. On my return to Pakistan, I mean, it's just like, the difference between English and Latin. So obviously, somebody like me can't read Latin. So, and Sanskrit is very, very developed, and it's a very old language. On my return to Pakistan, I found abundant books of the Sufi poets written in the Perso-Arabic script. Until then, for some centuries, the sacred text of Sufi poetry was preserved in the Guru Granth Sahib of the Sikh, and the Guru Granth Sahib is the secret Bible of the Sikhs. And as I said, the Sikhs are a cross between Hinduism and Islam. And the Gurmukhi is their sacred, the language is Gurmukhi, and the book is called Guru Granth Sahib. It was later, after the partition of 1947, that around the late 60s, Sufi poetry was published in the Perso-Arabic script. Lovers of Sufi poetry like me are beholden to Sikhism for preserving our sacred texts. I have shared here my journey as an exiled expatriate scholar, traveling the East and the West, and we'll look at some videos. And in the next lecture, I will discuss more details about Sufism and the Sufi shrines. Okay, can we get going?
Yes, we can.
So the first performance is going to be the secret sacrosanct performance where only men attend the ritual, and they are very erudite in Persian and Arabic and all the intellectual know-how of Sufism, and it's a male-dominated ritual, and you won't see any women here. And so this performance is in Delhi at the shrine of Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia, one of the earlier Sufis of the Chishti order that came to India. And the Chishti, there are many different genealogies of Sufism. So the Chishti genealogy is the one that is most associated with the singing of poetry with music. And, there's a whole line of these people. And I think, it's a top-notch uh, genealogy, which do the singing of Sufi poetry. But the other orders do it also. The Sohrawardi order, from which my family comes, and other orders, they do it too. But, they don't have that kind of significance like the Chishtis have. I mean, it's, it's kosher. Okay. Okay, now this is the shrine of Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia, and this is at the time of his death anniversary. The Sufis don't celebrate the birth of any one of their members. They celebrate the death, and it's called urs. Urs means a wedding. Rus, when the soul, because the individual's soul become one with the deity. And here they're singing Kal Kalbana. This is a very standard practice of starting a qawwali, which highlights Ali's right to the caliphate. You see, when the Prophet died, there was a conflict on as to who is going to succeed him. So there were 4 pious caliphs, people who were companions of the Prophet, Abu Bakr, Umar, Usman, Ali. And each one of these caliphs had a relationship with the Prophet's family. Either he had married into them or they had married into the thing. And so there is this conflict between the Sunnis and the Shias to this date, since the death of the Prophet Muhammad, where there's a section, who are called the Shias, who stress Ali's right to have become the Khalif. Immediate Khalif is like a spiritual leader, a divine leader, claiming that Muhammad, before he died, had made the tribes promise that they are going to select Ali, his grandson, and his son-in-law, in whose household he grew, to become the Khalif, because the Prophet, became a orphan at a very young age. His father had died when he was born, and he was about 6 or 7 years old when his mother also died. So his uncle's family took him in. These were tribal societies and very tight-knit. So the Kal Kalbana is, Kal means the saying, the famous saying, So they repeat the saying of the Prophet Muhammad, that he had wanted Ali to succeed him. And here they're going to sing about Ali's right to have become the Khalif. And because he was inducted into the practices of Sufism by the Prophet Muhammad himself, whereas the other 3 were not. And, since the time of the Prophet Muhammad to this day, this conflict has continued, between the Sunni and the Shia. And countries like Iran and Iraq are Shia countries because they uphold the right of Ali to the caliphate. And so, this thing continues, and they think about it in all kinds of qawwalis and Sufi practices. So this is one of them, and it pays homage to Ali. All right, and this is. Okay, so we see, this is a total male company here. And the person who is leading the singing of the qawwali is, when you sing the saying of anybody, it could be anybody, it could be my call. Call means, what I have said. So generally, they repeat the Prophet's desire to have appointed Ali as his successor to the caliphate. And the person sitting in the middle is a Canadian convert to Islam, Tahir Chishti. And there's a whole group of them, who have been living in India and Pakistan, studying Sufism, the practices, the discourse, and everything. And you see, I mean, some of them are Canadians, but they're also singing with the local people. And later on, we'll also see their women, who broke the boundaries of participating in Sufi rituals, which were the domain of only men. Okay. Well, you've heard, them repeating Ali. So this is, they are asserting Ali's right to have inherited, not, to have been the Khalif immediately after the Prophet's death. And here they're talking about Ali's valor, because most of the battles of Islam were fought by Ali, and they're singing about his sword, which was called Zulfikar. And because of his valor, they were able to overcome a lot of the opposition. And honestly, they were fighting against the Jews and Christians of Medina, and Ali was able to conquer a lot of the forts and everything of the Jews. So there is a conflict about it, and this is how Ali got involved. And as a result of that, for the killing of the Jews and the killing of the other stronger tribe, the Umayyads. There were two major tribes in Arabia at the time of the Prophet's birth. There were the Hashemites and there were the Umayyads. The Hashemites, they were actually both cousins, the Umayyads and the Hashemites, but the Hashemites were more spiritual, and the Umayyads were the traders, the capitalists. So when Muhammad came, he tried to equalize the society, and he says, everybody ought to be a participant of a faith, and you don't necessarily have to be a capitalist. And they had, and those days, they used to have camel caravans and everything. So there was a connection between the Umayyad capitalists and the Jews of Medina, because they too were traders and capitalists. So these were the demarcations. And as a result of that, when the Prophet died and Ali died, Ali's two sons got into conflict with the Umayyad descendant Yazid. And there was a big battle in which Hussein was killed, his 70 followers, his children, and he brought his whole family with them, they were massacred. Only the women were left. And so the women started this tradition of liturgy as they were paraded through the streets of from Karbala in Iraq, and they were paraded as examples, paraded through the streets of Karbala and all along the way to the Umayyad kind of, it wasn't a caliphate anymore, the monarchy in Damascus, and people wept as they went, and eventually there's a celebration in Muharram, which is the start of the Muslim New Year, and all the lament and the suffering of the women and the way the men died and the children were, uh, assassinated, Hussein's son and, nieces and nephews. So that whole story is recited in a very, very moving manner through Sakina, who was Hussein's daughter. And we see the female voice, they use it, to bring out the pathos of what happened in Karbala. And anybody, even the strongest person can't refrain from crying. And, the people who do these um, events and rituals are trained, to make people cry. And so that message is carried on, the Shia message is carried on through Sakina. And Sakina in the discourse of the Shia is showed as a 7 or 8-year-old girl, and who suffers, and she becomes the spokesman of the people who survived. But historically, when I researched it, Sakina was a grown woman, 18, 19 years old. And I don't know which Sakina it is that they talk about, but however, she's a mythical figure in Shia rituals. Okay, let's go. Okay, so the performers are actually quoting Muhammad, and which is the Shia claim that before he died, and Muhammad knew that he was going to die soon, and when he was returning from the Hajj, he stopped at a place called Qawm Ghadir, and according to the Shia, he lifted everybody's hands and said, made them promise that, after his death, they're going to choose Ali to be his successor. That's the Shia claim. The Sunnis claim that, because he died in the first Khalif's daughter's room, because, she was a young woman, Aisha. And they say, Abu Bakr, who succeeded the Prophet, was carrying out the prayers, at the time when the Prophet was very, very ill. So, they propagate this message through the call, the Prophet's call, which means, in Arabic, the Arabic thing is, it means, you all will promise that you are going to elect Ali. Okay. What happened?
All right, now it's time to share the second video.
Okay. And before we go to that, you see the men, they come and, come to the performers, they're coming and giving them money as expression of their appreciation for what the musicians are doing. And in between, you heard people saying, "Wah," Subhanallah, which is appreciating in religious terms, the kind of discourse that they're singing. Okay, let's go to so this is the first type, the secretive one, and you don't see any woman there. Now, this is the exact opposite at Shabazz Qalandar.
Right. 1 second.
पहला नंबर अली दा पहला नंबर चार चाराग तेरे बलने हो हमेशा चार
Okay, now this is the celebration in which all the people participate, the men and the women, and this is the urs, the celebrating the death anniversary of the Sufi saint, Hazrat Shabazz Qalandar, who traces his descent again from Ali and the Prophet. And this shrine is supposed to have very magical powers, and whatever you pray for, you get it. And I did visit the Shabazz Qalandar shrine when I was doing my field work in 98 or whatever. And it was a very, very modest kind of a shrine, and there was nothing spectacular about it. But because there's a strong group of, radicals who say, this celebration, quoting the Prophet and singing about it and is heresy, is bid'ah. And so they have gone and bombed a lot of these Sufi shrines. They say, there's a heresy going on and they're not supposed to sing to music, and they're not supposed to, talk about Ali's right to the caliphate. Now, if you played something like that in Saudi Arabia, you'll have your head chopped off, because they are Salafis and they don't believe in this thing. And they say, your relationship with God is a direct one. Whereas here, they need the intercession of the Sufi as a spiritual person. So this is the major difference. And by and large, the people who are not even Shias, even Sunnis, they participate in these rituals. And when you see, what's going on here, it's been called the largest party on earth by one of the journalists of the Guardian newspaper in England. So yeah, let's go. Let me stop here. You see, this is the new shrine. After it was bombed, the community, these people that you see here at the shrine, they put in the money, and then they created even a greater shrine, very spectacular. And you see the dome, it's covered with 24 karat gold, the paint in it. And inside, when you see, the sterling silver and everything, it was nothing like this, when I went there. But, it shows their devotion. And the woman in the singing is Amina Chishti. And you will see the others too, the guy who's, playing the harmonium. They call themselves Falafinna Ilahi, a group, that annihilates itself, wanting to become, to have a union with the divine. And but generally they're called the Ilahi group, and they are Canadians, and they've lived in India and Pakistan for a long time. And this girl has broken the boundaries, because playing the tabla or the drums has never been the domain of women. But she got into it, and she became a disciple of a Chishti mentor who trained her into it in Lahore. And so you'll find, things have changed. You will find more participation, active participation as musicians by this the Canadian group of Sufis converted to Islam. And we're going to be seeing more of it. But they're meshing in with the local people. And you see all the gold and the domes and everything. And inside it's even more spectacular. Okay. Can you stop here? So you see, this is the inside of the thing, and it wasn't, again, so spectacular in 98 when I visited it. After it was bombed, the water that they're, taking as a holy water comes through some kind of a spring. And so they've created this, sterling silver container, and, they cover themselves in the water, getting the blessings of Hazrat Shahbaz Qalandar. And also you will see a lot of the participants go into trance. You'll see them, the men and women. And this is a very major part of Sufi performance. And, throughout the lecture series, you'll hear a performance, talking about diwana, losing yourself, getting out of the world of reason, and, being in touch with your inner self, and be in abandon. And, these people are not very wealthy people. So the only entertainment for them is, to make, to going to the shrines, as a part of their life, and, their recreation and devotion and spirituality and everything. It's all very organic and cohesive. Okay. Can we stop here? You see, I mean, they're meshing this Sufi saint, Shahbaz Qalandar, who claims descent from the Prophet's family, and Ali. He becomes one with Ali, and they're still singing about Ali's right to the caliphate. And, you will hear the word Ali, and joined in with this Sufi saint, this is one of the largest shrines in the province of Sindh. And in between, you probably hear them saying haq, haq means, the rightful. Ali had the right to the caliphate. And you'll hear this a lot, in the following performances also, gently they'll just put it in haq, meaning to say, that he was deprived of his right to the caliphate. Okay. Now, this is the tomb of the Prophet Hazrat Shahbaz Qalandar. And again, the radicals say, this is biddat and this is heresy, you're not supposed to do it. But there's the grassroots people, the majority of people, this is their spirituality. And you see all these columns, they're sterling silver. And people are making a line to get in. And you see the artistry of the inner side, all the decoration and all the filigree and everything. the community, put in a lot of money, just to make these radicals feel, you can bomb our shrines, and we'll make it even more strong, and more beautiful than it was before. I mean, so you have, sterling silver and 24 karat gold, decorating this shrine, and all the carvings and the paintings that we'll see gradually. Okay. Now, this woman has gotten into a trance, and she's not acting. She's actually got into a trance, with the music and her belief and everything. And she'll continue, expressing her devotion, or her, being affected by the whole thing. And I think the folk tale is that the musicians have to keep singing, and they can't stop until she gets out of that trance, or whoever is in a trance, because if you stop, you stop it, they go into a state of shock. I mean, they have made such a connection of their bodies with the spirituality. And you see, men and women all together. And this is what original Islam was. And even now, when you go for the pilgrimage to Mecca, there's no segregation. It's just like this, men and women are together. And this whole thing of separation and the hijab and all that kind of thing is an innovation of the radicals. Okay, let's proceed. And yeah, and they're saying, Ali is in every breath, and they talk about Ali's 4 descendants, his daughter Fatima, and her husband Ali, who was the Prophet's cousin also, and became his son-in-law, and the 2 children, Ali and Fatima's 2 children, Hassan and Hussein, who were supposed to carry the message of Islam further. And Hussein's tiff with the Umayyad capitalists was, that what they were doing was not real Islam. And, because there was a lot of debauchery going on in Syria. What happened was the Umayyads, left Arabia, to just get away from the whole control of Islam and everything. And they moved to Damascus in Syria, and they established their empire or kingdom there. I mean, it wasn't really a caliphate, it became a kingdom. And so they're again repeating the whole thing. And, Ali dam dam de andar means, Ali is in every breath. Okay. Here, you see again, they're using the language of ecstasy and trance, of getting into that state of trance, and divanapan, and just losing yourself. So this is what they're singing. Okay. Okay, so they're still singing the thing, and we're just concentrating on this tabla player, Amina Kishti. She took on the Muslim name, and she did this apprenticeship with a Sufi Chishti master who gave her his wisdom, his experience of playing the tabla. And I mean, anybody can't just get up and start playing the tabla. You have to be inducted into it. If you're a part of the Sufi thing, through a mentor. You don't take off on it on your own. There's this whole tradition. Okay. We stop here. You see, even the woman in the hijab, she's also dancing. I mean, it's a free for all, and the men, they come and again, give money to the musicians as a sign of appreciation for what they're doing, and you will find, hordes of rupee bills, which are the equivalent of $1 bill, hundreds and hundreds, just to show their appreciation to these performers. Okay. Can we stop here? You see, a number of them have gotten into trance, and you can get into trance, once you listen to it and you get addicted to it, because I've worked in this area. I mean, you just get into another level of consciousness. I mean, it's very addictive. So, with these people doing, because of the language and the music and the drumming and everything, you just get into another world, which is the spiritual world, and which is very much questioned by the Salafis and the Wahhabis, who just believe in textual Islam, the Quran, that's it. They say, we only believe in the Quran and that's it, and or whatever these people are doing is heresy, is blasphemy, and like I said, you can't do this thing in Saudi Arabia. You'll be chopped off. Okay. Can we stop here? They're talking about Qalandar. Qalandar is somebody who's given up the world, and he's got into the spirituality. So Ali gave up the world, he was into spirituality. And this Sufi saint, for who's urs, and it goes on for several weeks. It's not just a day, people come from all over the country. And so as I said, Shahbaz Qalandar becomes one with Ali. And again, this concept of the Qalandar is, like you have in Hinduism, it's a yogi, a person, who's a mendicant, who has nothing to do with the physical world. And this is a stage that you reach, through a lot of meditation and practice and, the whole spiritual world. Okay, let's go. Can we stop here? You see the architecture? I mean, the paint, the pillar on the right-hand side, this is hand carved. And it takes, months to do this kind of thing. And, there's special artisans who do it. And also the filigree around the mihrab. Mihrab is, this thing, it's hand carved. It's hand carved from marble. And all along you see the names of all the four caliphs, Ali, Abu Bakr, Umar, Usman, and also Fatma Zahra, who was the Prophet's daughter. So, all the, and Ya Allah, paying tribute to God. And so, all these symbols are there, and you see this chandelier in there. And look at the number of people that are there. And this goes on for weeks, as I said, 24/7. Okay. Done?
Mhm.
Okay. So can we go on to the next one? Okay, now this is again a qawwali by the same group, they call themselves the Ilahi group, the short of Fanafillah Ilahi. They just cut into Ilahi. And here they are kind of repeating, what the Sufi said. The Sufi said, if you can't read the Quran, no problem. If you can't say your prayers in Arabic, no problem. As long as you can say Allahu, that God is great. And this breath is, who. This is a very popular mode of getting into meditation and, breathing in, breathing out. It's not that easy. Once you get into this kind of meditation, it takes a lot of practice. But what they're saying to the people, as long as you can say Allahu, you're a good enough human being. You don't necessarily have to be a Muslim. You're a good enough human being, because they're challenging the hegemony of the clergy, the qazis, who have taken control of the society and, made life difficult for everybody. And it doesn't have to be, because, they're into power and into control. So this is a reaction of the whole thing. Okay, you can keep your Quran and all your Arabic and everything. We're just going to say Allahu. Come on. All right.
This first Qawwali is well known and well loved by so many. It's like an anthem for Qawwali in many ways. Allahu, Allahu. And it was the first Qawwali that I taught the group and that we learned in 2001. So there's quite a history of exploring this number. You, the one who glows with new radiance in every moment. You perplex our yearning eyes. Every branch sings the praise of your creation, and every leaf gives evidence of your nature. You were, you are, and forever will be. Allahu, Allahu, Allahu.
Okay, so they're starting the thing, and you can see there are these Canadians there, but there are also local people in there, the indigenous people, the guy, playing the violin. And again, Amina Tishti is playing the drums. And, she's the only drummer, among all these men, among these men. And Tahir Chishti is playing the harmonium. And so they're going to sing Allahu. So you see, they're throwing money at the performers, and they're just doing the Allahu thing, and uh, inviting more people into their spiritual practice, because for the Sufis, worship is through music, singing the Quranic texts, the Prophet sings and everything. And this all happened with the coming of the first male Sufi in the continent, Hazrat Moinuddin Chishti. He came from Chisht in Afghanistan, and most of these people that we are going to see are coming from Afghanistan. Rumi and all these people, it wasn't the Afghanistan of the Taliban that we see today, with bombs and Kalashnikovs and all that kind of thing. I mean, these were very peaceful people, and this was the real, Muslim world. And yeah, this is what they're doing. And yes, so when Hazrat Moinuddin Chishti came to the subcontinent, he said, well, how do these people, they were Hindus and non-Muslims there, Christians and Buddhists and, godless people like myself. And they said, how do these people practice their religion? And they were practicing it through music. And they said, all right, we're going to bring the message of Islam, through music. And that's, where the music thing came into practice in South Asia and Southeast Asia, which is again very abhorrent, to the diehards, that, you're singing all these things, the Quranic text to music and all that kind of thing. But the argument of the Sufis is, when you make the call to pray, you do it according to a rhythm. And at that time, when the Prophet was alive, there were no musical instruments, but the duff, the duff is like a tambourine thing, was allowed. It's only, as society progressed, that drums and all these things came in. But, many of these people, the Wahhabis and the Salafis, they just go by the textual thing, and their Islam is very tribal. It's a very different kind of Islam. This is a very sophisticated Islam, which is bringing in a lot of traditions, not just the Muslim tradition, but the Christian tradition, the Judaic tradition, the Zoroastrian tradition. I mean, they're including everyone. It's very inclusive. It's not like, you're a Muslim and you're a non-Muslim. If you're not wearing the parda, you're a non-Muslim. No, there's a lot of acceptance. And this was very threatening to the clergy, because it challenged their control on society. And they've always ganged up with the establishment, or the establishment has always ganged up, with these clerics and Orthodox people. So, and we saw this, what happened in Pakistan and Afghanistan, a dictator, validated himself, through the clergy. Okay, and that's why they don't like Sufism. Okay, let's go. Done?
Yes.
Okay. What's the next one?
The Child Bride's Lament.
Oh, all right. Now we are going to see, a courtesan, a trained musician, singing in Awadhi, the actual lament of the child bride. And she's speaking as the child bride. And these women, they're not sex slaves or anything. They're courtesans, and they're called Baiji. So she's a Baiji. And the Baiji is, they earn money through their performances, but a number of times, they are second mistresses, to wealthy people, landlords, and, business people and politicians and all that. And they keep them separate from their families, because mainly they go to these Baijis, because they can perform, they can play music, and they go to them for, and they give them, a house and, large sums of money, because the wife is not going to entertain you like this, as the Baiji will. So this is all part of a feudal culture. So we'll see this woman, singing in Awadhi, the child bride's lament. here, the Babul is the father, and we hear her using the word Babul for the father, and we'll see it in the Heer performance also. And I mean, the way she's dressed, with the thing on her forehead, it's called a tikka, and the flower, jasmine's in her hair, and, her makeup and everything. I mean, she's very sophisticated, but I think people like myself can tell, that, I mean, she's very refined. She's singing something very interesting and very spiritual. But the whole context is that of the Baiji. And people love to go to the Baijis. So you see all these people, coming to hear the Baiji sing the child bride's lament. Okay. Let me stop here. You see the movement, where she holds her hand to her ear. This is a very professional gesture, gesture that professional women, the Baijis use. I mean, normally it's, even when people are singing, they don't make this gesture, but this is her gesture, it shows who she is, and she's very proud of it. And again, she's singing in Awadhi. The same thing, Babul, why did you put me into exile? Why did you send me away? So this is her lament. And this has been written, the lyric has been written again by Amir Khusro, who was a disciple of the saint, Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia, the first qawwali that we sang. And so, I mean, Khosrow at that time, in 12 something, whatever, 100 something, was so aware of the suffering of the child bride. I mean, it's only now that the NGOs are talking about, prohibiting child marriage, but he was very aware of it at that time. He didn't think it was right, and that's why there's this lament, her begging her father, asking him, why are you sending me there? To my brothers, you've given palaces and many too. And to me, what have you given? You're just giving me exile. So again, we see the gender dynamics here of the difference between men and women, and, the way society worked, and it still works like that. And this is a classic that is sung at the time of the bride's departure in South Asian weddings. And, it's sung with a lot of pathos, and I mean, people cry, and she's crying. It's the final thing, when she's leaving to go to her husband's house. Okay.
अमीर खुसरो ने बेटा और बेटी में बराबरी की बात कही। भैया को दिल हो बाबुल महला तू महला, भैया को दिल हो महला तू महला, अरे हम तो तीनों परदेस, अरे किया बाबुल मोहे खाने को ब्यागी विदेश, अरे लकिया बाबुल मोहे खाने को ब्यागी
Can we stop
विदेश।
here? So he's saying, that Amir Khusro at that time was so aware of, the gender dynamics. And he was aware that, girls and boys should get the same inheritance. Why is it that, the males are preferred to females, I mean, the female gets the lowest in whatever, is there in the society, and the males get, all the wealth, because the philosophy is, she doesn't get much from her father because it's expected, she's going to get it from her husband's side. But, then it's not hers. And also you see her jewelry, it's 24 karat gold. And these women are very wealthy. They're very wealthy. They're not sex slaves, so they're kept in real style by their patrons. And we're going to be seeing other women like that. And in this class of courtesans, they celebrate the birth of a girl, and they put a boy out, in the balcony or something, because the guy will not bring in the kind of money, that the girl brings in, and she's trained in poetry and music, and even, look at her movements, her hand movements are the movements of a dance. Okay, I think that's enough. Shall we go on to the next one? Okay, I'll give you the introduction to this one.
All right, so this is the here video.
Yes. So you see, this is another woman. I mean, the first we heard the child bride lament. Now this is here, a grown woman who defies her society. She assumes more agency, and she makes all the effort to elope with her lover, who's Ranja. And I'm going to, give you more details afterwards. And but she's forced into this marriage, to somebody else, because Ranja was only a cowherd, and I'll tell you the story later on. And so she's forcibly married, and without her own consent. And, the mother and the daughter agree on the thing, that she never said yes. She never said yes to the marriage. They just brought in this mullah or the qazi, and two witnesses who were all liars. And they said, yes, she said yes, to the marriage. She did not. I mean, she wanted to be with her beloved, her lover, but, because this guy, her lover didn't have much wealth and everything, although he had it, but he had been deprived by his brothers. So just for the sake of the family honor, they force her to go off with this idiot, Sadhu, Sada Khera. And so this is all about that. And Lata Mangeshkar is called the Nightingale of India. She lived to be 92. She only died last year. And also the melody queen. And mostly she sings in her own language, Marathi and Gujarati and Bangla. But the way she sings this thing in Punjabi, because the Heer Raja myth is a myth from the Punjab, it's representing a very feudal society, there are all these dynamics of land and wealth and power and kinship and everything. So the way she sings Lata Mangeshkar, I mean, she is singing in the exact dialect, of a Punjabi singer. And also, with the Child Bride's melody, it's a standard melody. It can't be changed. That's how it's sung. And that's how Amir Khosrow created it. And the Heer myth is created by another Sufi, Waris Shah. And it's again, I mean, the standard language, the standard melody, and a musician's, um, uh, class is evaluated on the way that she or he sings the Heer. And again, the way they sing it, brings tears to people's eyes. It's meant to be like that because, this is Heer's lament. But she asserts her agency. She's a grown woman, but and eventually, she tries to run away with Ranja, and we see the consequences. But the child bride, poor thing, has no agency. So this is Lata Mangeshkar singing Heer.
इस तोहफे में है 5,000 सुनहरे गाने और कुछ यादें।
डोली चढ़ दिया मारिया डोली चढ़ दिया मारिया हीर चिका मैनू ले चले बाबला ले चले वे मैनू रख ले बाबला हीर रखे
We stop here.
डोली
So, this section talks about Heer, that she screamed and she lamented. And Chika is, I mean, she really cried and made a noise, as they were forcibly putting her into this palanquin. The palanquin used to be like a little carriage that was carried by 4 men. And the men who carried it were only the potters. Only the potters could carry the bride's palanquin. And so this is what she's saying, I mean, why are you sending me away? I mean, why couldn't you keep me? Why are you sending me away to somebody, that is an idiot, but he has a lot of money. He's a semi-intelligent person or stupid or whatever it is. And so, I mean, the depth in this woman's voice, that she screeched, she begged her father, why are you sending me away? Okay.
तत कहार ने ले चले वे मेरा अखिया कदी ना मोड़दा से ते ओ समय बाबल किथे गए चले वे तेरी छतर छावे रुख हेठ बाबल
Stop here. So he's talking about the 4 potters who are taking away her palanquin. And he's asking her father, you never turned down any desire of mine. You never turned down any wish of mine. What is happening now? You're sending me away from the shade of your house, the tree, the shade of the tree that is your house. I mean, why are you sending me away to a place that I don't know and where I don't want to go? And I mean, there's a lot of pathos in the way she's singing, and I mean, it's very moving. If you understand the language. But even then, I think we're probably getting her grief. Okay.
ते दुख दर्द मुसीबतां से चले
Can we stop here? He says, I mean, I couldn't even enjoy a few days, in the comfort of your house and the security of your home, and you're sending me to a place that I don't know. I'm going on a journey that I don't even know. So, effectively, she's addressing the patriarchy, how women were treated and they still are treated. Okay.
वे साडा बोलिया चलिया माफ करना ते पंज रोज तेरे कर रह चले
Can we stop here? You see, the language she's using is the standard language that people use, when they're being separated from each other. For instance, I go to see my sister and I'm leaving her and, I'm living in America, she's living in Pakistan. So you beg forgiveness, that if I said anything to you, please forgive me. And, she would say the same, and I think the use of the dialect and the language is so grassroots. It's not an uppity kind of language. It's the language of the people. Okay.
ले वे रांझिया रब नू सौंपिया तू ते असी जालमां दे वस पे चले वे जेड़े नाल ख्याल उसार दे सां ते खाने सब उम्मीद दे टह चले वे
So she's addressing Ranja, her lover. She says, I'm going, there's nothing that you can do to keep me. And I'm going into a world, which is very cruel. And, and she said, I've been, put there and that's it. And this is a goodbye to Ranja, her lover. And I'm going to give you more details after, this is done.
चार कन्निया मेरिया वेख खाली ते असी नाल नाही कुछ ले चले वे कूड़ी दुनिया ते शान कुड़ा ते वारस शाहोरी सच के चले वे
So she said, I'm not taking anything with me, I'm just going barehanded, but, my heart is with you. And um, this is what Waris Shah was the creator of this myth, which is based on, they say real life, because a lot of these myths they believe happened in communities and then they become legends and, turn into a myth. So in the end, she addresses Waris Shah, the creator. It's an epic. It's a very thick epic. So I'll give you the background of this thing. Now this is, Heer and the Ranja, with his flute, because he could play the flute very well, and he could control his father's cattle and things, because when he's kicked out of the brother's house, the sisters-in-law say, okay, go and marry Heer, because she was the only daughter of a father, and very beautiful and very loved. And so he does go there, and so he meets him and takes Ranja to her father and says, well, he can be your cowherd, and he gets a job there. And in the meantime, they're meeting clandestinely. And now this is, I laminated this whole photo or painting. It was just black and white, and I got it from an archive at the School of Oriental and African Languages. So, all this lamination, all the color and everything I did personally, and all the detail in it. Okay. Now this is here, I mean, after she runs away with Ranja, the family bring her back and say, it's a question of her honor. And although, I mean, Ranja did belong to the same clan as these people, the Jats, the Jats are the agriculturists, with lots of land and things, But as I said, Ranja got deprived of his share of the property because he was the youngest. His parents had died, and as usual, as happens in families, the brothers appropriated the best part of the property and gave him very little. And so they bring her back from Ranja, and Ranja comes to make her elope with him, dressed as a woman and as a yogi. Yogi is a mendicant, and so he also assumes a female garb, and they bring her back and promise her, that, they're going to marry her to Ranja. And then there's this whole argument. Her mother sides with her. She says, the contract was never made, and it's a question of the Shariat. According to the Shariat, Islamic law, the woman should have the right to consent or not the consent. But, as I said, the clergy ganged up with the men, and they said, oh, yes, she said yes. And then, when she refuses to go, they hit her with a stick and just, throw her into that carriage, and she's taken away against her will. So here, the father is, they lured him back, and actually he's feeding her poison. She's being poisoned, and he dies. And when Ranja finds out, that she's dead, then he also comes and, dies at her grave. The usual thing. Okay. All right. So, yeah, I mean, briefly, they were the same caste, the Jats, Ranja and Heer. They were the same clan, but because Ranja didn't have the power and the money, and, he was spoiled, so he was not worthy of a beautiful woman like Heer. I mean, she was the only daughter and, the owner of a very large property. So this is what it goes, how it goes. It's a long story, but this is a tirade against the mullah and the establishment, how they treat women and force them into relationships, which are against their will. Okay, that's it.
Now it's time for Ustad Malish.
Oh, all right. So this one is an Afghani woman singer, Ustad Mahwish, who is from Afghanistan. And Afghanistan was the land of Sufis. The Chishtiya order came from Afghanistan. And he is in exile in Sacramento. And, because the theme of these lectures is, exile and displacement. So she's a displaced artist who had a very illustrious career in Afghanistan. She used to sing for the radio, and she was given the title of Ustad. Ustad means master. A woman has never gotten that title as an Ustad. And the musical tradition of Afghanistan meshes in with the musical traditions of India and Pakistan, because as I showed you in the map, it was the same region. So these people would come and train in India, mainly in India. And then, you know, when this whole thing happened in 78 with the Soviets coming into Afghanistan and the US trying to fight them on Afghan soil, she was forced to leave. And I was trying to research, you know, her earlier performances. I mean, she was a beautiful woman, and the songs that she sings are beautiful, but I could find them unless, you know, I really have to spend time researching something of her younger times. And I was lucky enough to attend one of her concerts at the University of Texas at Austin. And you'll see this woman, you know, she's 75 years old, but she's, despite having lost everything, all the recordings and whatever she was, you know, she's taken it very gracefully. And so there's this whole diaspora of Afghan uh, uh, exiles in California, and also Irani exiles, you know, because of what happened in Iran during the time of the Shah and the mullahs took over. So we're going to play a performance by her.
کابل چنان گیریه کند دل برای تو کاخر بمیرد از غم تو در قفای تو.
Can we stop here? He is lamenting the loss of Kabul, you know, which is the capital of Afghanistan, and it still is. And he says, Girya. Girya means, you know, I'm lamenting the loss of my homeland. And she, I think, was more or less the same age as I was, because I had also to go into exile for the same reasons that, you know, everybody else had to go into, you know, because the Western powers brought in these the Taliban animals. And these societies were very sophisticated, as you see, you know, and so was my country. So, you know, that's why the theme of these lectures is exile and displacement, how we were displaced. I was 55 when I was displaced. I had a career in Pakistan, lots of property and everything. But these Taliban brought a death sentence on me simply because I was working, you know, with women's rituals and their voices and all that. And I think she was more or less the same age. So she's lamenting the loss of Kabul, her culture, her home and everything. And sadly, you know, I don't think she was able to bring any of her recordings, or if they were with Radio Kabul, you know, with what happened with the Taliban and the Mujahideen and the civil war, probably, you know, nothing has remained of her. I'm going to research it. But I did it this morning, but I couldn't really find her younger self. She still is beautiful, but at that time she was very beautiful. Okay.
کاخر بمیرد غم تو در قفای تو. قربان نام نامیت ای شهر نامدار. قربان نام نامیت ای شهر نامدار.
Can we stop here? He's singing in Dari. Dari is the Afghan version of Persian. And Actually, I mean, I don't know much Persian, but I know, I mean, I can read it and I understand some bits of it, but I'm understanding what she's saying, you know. She says such a beautiful city, such a distinguished city, you know, was ruined to pieces. And you can see, you know, she's so emotional about Kabul as she's singing. Okay.
قربان آسمایی و خواجه صفای تو قربان آسمایی و خواجه صفای تو کابل چنان دیر یکند دل برای تو کآخر بمیرد از غم تو در قفای تو کآخر بمیرد از غم تو در قفای تو کابل چنان دیر یکند دل برای تو کآخر بمیرد از غم تو در قفای تو کآخر بمیرد از غم تو در قفای تو.
He says her heart weeps, you know, for having lost Kabul. And he misses it. And, you know, there's this separation with her homeland in Kabul and, you know, being in exile and in dysphoria. But, you know, people have rebuilt their lives. She has rebuilt her life. I've rebuilt mine, you know. I was 55 when I had to leave everything, my property, everything, you know. I was a very wealthy woman. I had to start from zero. And I admire her, you know, that at such a late stage in life, you know, she's got a good attitude and she's coping with it. You have to, you know, you can't just, you know, keep on lamenting it. You have to pick up pieces and move on. And, you know, for no fault of yours, because, you know, the superpowers are fighting in your country without, you know, you don't have the choice. It's just the militaries and the capitalism and this whole thing for power. So that's it. Is that, do you have something more, Malik?
No, I believe that is it. And thus concludes Lecture 3 of our Exile and Displacement series, The Female Voice in Sufi Ritual, an Introduction. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and we hope to see you in our upcoming lecture.
No question?